Hello folks, it's the Paces Chaser again. Welcome to another one of my videos. In this one we're going to look at the Teesside Trolleybus system, which operated between 1919 and 1971. It was operated for most of its life by the Teesside Railless Traction Board, or TRTB for short, and for the last few years by Teesside Municipal Transport, or TMT for short. So we're going to start with a brief history of the system, then we'll look at the route it took on a map, and finally we'll look at some photographs of the trolleybuses and contrast them with some pictures of the area that they served today. So let's crack on. So when you think of Teesside, you think of Middlesbrough, Stockton-on-Tees and of Thornaby. Well, the Teesside Trolleybus system went nowhere near Stockton or Thornaby and only got within 1.5 miles of Middlesbrough town centre at North Ormesby. This always seems strange to researchers who are not familiar with the area, or at least are not familiar with how the area was. But the route was devised to get steel workers who were employed in the works at South Bank and Cargo Fleet to and from the place of work. And none of those workers lived in the centre of Middlesbrough. In fact, until quite recently, hardly anybody lived in the centre of Middlesbrough. It was just a shopping and commercial kind of area. So proposals were first made for a tramway in the area in 1901 and 1902 by a syndicate of local companies and businessmen. They were approached by the Imperial Tramways Company, who ran the tramways in Middlesbrough at the time, and they offered to build and run the line and have services running by 1907. The syndicate agreed to this because tram operation wasn't really part of their core businesses, so it was easy to get somebody who knew what they were doing to do it. Unfortunately, nothing actually happened on the construction of the line. Various time extensions were given to Imperial Tramways, but still nothing happened. And eventually in 1912 the syndicate ran out of patience and refused to give them any more time extensions. Now in 1911 the first trolleybus systems in the UK had opened jointly at Leeds and Bradford. Trolleybuses being electrically powered vehicles that take the power from the overhead wire in the same way as a tram or an electric train. So the syndicate decided to make a new proposal in 1912, this time for a trolleybus system rather than a tramway. So they formed a company called the North Ormesby, South Bank, Normanby and Grangetown Railless Traction Company. I'm not quite sure how they were going to fit that onto the side of a vehicle, but there we go. They didn't record that bit. So they started construction. It took place fairly quickly, despite the outbreak of World War I in 1914. The depot at Cargo Fleet was completed in October 1915. Just next to the depot was the Eston branch of the North Eastern Railway, which the road crossed on a level crossing. The North Eastern refused to allow the trolleybuses to use the level crossing, so a bit of a diversion to the road and a new bridge over the railway had to be built. That was completed the month after the depot, so November 1915. In the meantime, the firm of Clough Smith and Company had started putting in the poles for the overhead wiring and the wiring itself. The first pole was planted at Normanby in July 1915, and the overhead wiring was completed in February of 1916. Power was supplied from the private steelworks power station of Bolckow, Vaughan, who were one of the promoters of the scheme, and this remained the case until 1955, when the power began to be supplied from the grid. Unfortunately, although the trolleybus system was completed in 1916, it stood unused as the vehicles that had been ordered for it had not arrived. They'd been ordered from the Railless Electric Traction Company, who were one of the movers and shakers in the early years of trolleybus systems. Incidentally, trolleybuses are often referred to as trackless trams or railless trams in the early days, hence the frequent appearance of the word railless in the story so far. Railless Electric Traction Company used a lot of German-made equipment, which immediately became unavailable when the First World War broke out, as it fell foul of the new trading with the enemy laws. This and other problems had led to Railless going into receivership in 1916. It was eventually bought out of receivership by Short Brothers of Rochester in Kent, and it commenced trading again. All of the upheaval had delayed the Teesside vehicles quite significantly. In 1918, still before the vehicles had been delivered, the North Ormesby, South Bank, Normanby and Grangetown Railless Traction Company were approached by Middlesbrough Corporation, who had just bought the tramways in Middlesbrough from the Imperial Tramways Company, to see if they'd be interested in selling the trolleybus system to Middlesbrough Corporation. It turned out that Eston Urban District Council were also interested in purchasing the trolleybus undertaking, so the two councils got together and formed a joint undertaking to purchase the company. It was called the Teesside Railless Traction Board and was owned 1/3 by Middlesbrough Corporation and 2/3 by Eston Urban District Council. The TRTB took over on the 30th of December 1918. Eventually the vehicles began to arrive from railless, such that the car could experimentally run over the entire system on the 19th of September 1919. It should be mentioned that although railless had supplied the vehicles, they didn't actually build them as such. Instead they used to subcontract the components out to other firms. So the Teesside vehicles had chassis by the Cleveland Car Company of Darlington, bodywork by English Electric of Preston, and electrical equipment by Dick Care and Company, who had factories in Kilmarnock and in Preston. The various bits would be taken to the railless works in Leeds and put together, and then the complete vehicles were towed through to the customer, in this case to the TRTB at Cargo Fleet Depot. Incidentally, anybody who's interested in the history of railless electric traction, and indeed of Clough Smith and Company and Charles H. Rowe, who we'll meet later on, is referred to the leedsengine.info website, where there are full histories of all three undertakings. So again, leedsengine.info. So on Saturday the 8th of November 1919 there were finally enough vehicles delivered to allow the service to begin. At first only single-deck vehicles were allowed on the route for reasons that we'll see later on when we look at the photographs. The original route ran from North Ormesby, which is known as Doggy to locals. Nobody seems to know quite why. Apparently one theory is that if you look at it from above it looks like a Scotty dog in shape. Another one is it's shaped like a dog's hind leg. And yet another one is that when the iron and steel works were open in the area, they created a smell of wet dog which kind of hung over North Ormesby. But nobody seems to know which, if any of those, is the actual reason. But again, for whatever reason, it's known as Doggy to locals and North Ormesby to anybody else. So the route ran from there through Cargo Fleet past the depot to Bennett's Corner in South Bank, where it split. One route continued on to Grangetown, where it terminated in the Market Square, whilst the other one ran along Normanby Road to Normanby, which was just a village at the time. Normanby was in Eston Urban District Council's area, but as you can see the trolleybuses didn't actually serve Eston itself. In 1924 this was rectified with the introduction of a hybrid vehicle which ran under trolley wires as far as Normanby terminus. When it arrived there, the booms, in other words the poles which collected the power from the overhead wires, were lowered and secured, and then it had a petrol engine that was started up, and that was used to reach Eston. The engine acted like a generator and generated power for the motors. Incidentally, petrol-electric hybrid buses were fairly common in the 1920s, again where the engine generated power for the electric motors, but the ability to operate as a trolleybus was very unusual, if not unique to the TRTB vehicle. So when that annoying neighbour that you don't really like is boasting about his new hybrid car, you can stop him in his tracks with the revelation that buses use the same technology pretty much 100 years ago. That should stop him for a bit. So the hybrid lasted around 3 years, which is about average for the vehicles of the period, after which Eston was served by conventional buses. The TRTB ran normal buses alongside the trolleybuses for most of its existence, and as well as providing the link to Eston, they also started to provide links to and from Middlesbrough town centre. It must be stressed though that most services towards Middlesbrough and Eston were provided by the United Automobile Company, or United for short, with TRTB very much playing the second fiddle. During the Second World War, double-deckers were finally authorised because the traffic was overwhelming the single-deckers basically. So 8 Sunbeam Ws were purchased with double-deck bodywork. 7 more Sunbeams were bought in 1950, this time of the F4 model, which was basically the same as the W. The W stood for wartime, it was just an economy version basically of the normal chassis. All 15 of those buses were fitted with new bodywork by Charles Rowe of Leeds between 1960 and 1965 to extend their lives. So the original 1919 route stayed pretty much unaltered for 32 years, but after World War II construction had begun of a new housing estate in the Grangetown area, so in 1951 the Grangetown route was altered. So instead of going up towards the marketplace, the vehicles continued down Bolckow Road and then along Birchington Avenue through the new housing estate to a terminus at Kingsley Road. The marketplace wiring was retained just for occasional short workings and for enthusiast specials, but it wasn't used very regularly from that time onwards. So again, that alteration happened in 1951. The new housing kept spreading outwards fairly slowly by the look of it, but in 1964, 13 years later, the terminus was moved from Kingsley Road up to Fabian Road, further along Birchington Avenue, and then the turning facilities at Kingsley Road were abandoned at the same time in 1964. I just mentioned that the TRTB ran buses. There is one of them. It's a row-bodied Leyland Leopard, which appears to not know if it's going to South Bank or Normanby. It's just hedging its bets by the destination blind. So as traffic levels increased in the 1960s, there was increasing concern about the turning manoeuvre at Normanby. We'll go through that very shortly. But in order to alleviate it, it was proposed to extend the route through Eston and make a circular route, so linking together the Fabian Road and the Normanby termini to form a new circular. United objected strongly to this extension because it was an incursion into their territory, but they had talks between the two companies, and eventually an agreement was reached, and the extension opened on the 31st of March 1968. And there is a trolleybus in Eston Square, just to illustrate the point. So from the 31st of March 1968, as I said, the extension opened. The trolleybuses ran from North Ormesby down to Bennett's Corner at South Bank, and then they either went clockwise via Grangetown, Eston and Normanby, or anti-clockwise via Normanby, Eston and Grangetown, back to South Bank, and then back along to North Ormesby. The opening of the extension on the 31st of March 1968 was the final act of the TRTB, who, following local government reorganisation, ceased to exist at midnight on that day. From the 1st of April, they became part of Teesside Municipal Transport, along with the Council Transport Departments of Middlesbrough and of Stockton-on-Tees. Now, by any reckoning, the extension, which was the last to open on any trolleybus system in the UK, was a spectacular waste of money. The new owners, the TMT, only expected to run trolleybuses until 1973, but in the event it didn't even last this long. Despite the rebodying the ageing chassis of the wartime, Sunbeam trolleybuses were becoming unreliable, so in March 1969 5 were taken off the road and replaced by an equivalent number of second-hand trolleybuses purchased from Reading, who had recently closed their trolleybus system. There were also Sunbeams, but this time of the F4A type, but they were bodied by Birmingham of Blackpool and were far more modern than the Teesside buses, having been new in 1961. Indeed, they were the penultimate new trolleybuses supplied in the UK, the last being for Bournemouth in 1962. Despite the modernity, the ex-Reading buses seemed to object strongly to being in the north of England, such that by the end of 1973 were out of service. 2 were being broken up for spares and the other one was just being stored to possibly re-enter service, but it never did in the end. The resulting shortage of trolleybuses saw frequent workings by motor buses on the trolleybus route, often showing the confusing destination trolley service. Also in 1970, road alterations at North Ormesby saw the trolleybus route cut back by around 200 yards, and a new process of turning the vehicles was introduced by reversing into Hampden Street and driving back out again. The system had contracted slightly a couple of years before in 1968, when the wire into Grangetown Marketplace was finally taken out of use. That happened shortly after the extension opened at the end of March. And then the turning facilities at Normanby, which had caused problems, were taken out as well at the same time. And also there had been a reverser at South Bank just onto the Normanby Road, and that was taken out as well. So the cutback of the North Ormesby route marked a further reduction of the system, following its large extension in 1968. Dissatisfaction with the new turning arrangements at North Ormesby, coupled with further proposals for redevelopment in the area, and the increasing unreliability of the trolleybuses themselves, and a shortage of spare parts, led to proposals to abandon the trolleybuses altogether. By early 1971, the Teesside Trolleybus system was one of only 2 surviving in the UK, the other one being Bradford. TRTB and the TMT had acquired various spares and equipment from the other trolleybus systems as they closed. However, as they became none left to close, the supply of such parts dried up, and manufacturers had long since ceased making new parts because the market for them was dwindling away. In August 1970, Teesside Municipal Transport renumbered its vehicles into a common series, so you remember they took over Middlesbrough, Stockton and the Teesside Railless Traction Board, so numbered the vehicles into one common series, with a prefix to denote the vehicle type. The trolleybuses, which had previously been numbered between 1 and 13 and 16 and 17, became T281 to T295, with the ex-Reading buses stuck in the middle of the ones which had been new to Teesside. Some of the renumberings were on paper only, as the vehicles involved were out of traffic and stored in the depot. So as 1971 dawned, only 7 trolleybuses were available for service, although a further one was returned to service in the final week of operation. I think that was T287. The vehicle requirement for trolleybus route was 10 vehicles, so appearances by motorbuses were a daily occurrence. There was still some uncertainty regarding when the last day of trolleybus operation would be, as it depended on delivery of new Daimler Fleetline motorbuses. These were due in December 1970 but had been delayed. Eventually enough had arrived for 10 to be allocated to the former TRTB depot at Cargo Fleet to work the trolleybus route, and it was announced that the last day of service for the trolleybuses would be Sunday the 4th of April 1971. The Sunday requirement was for just 4 vehicles, so they managed to run a full trolleybus service, and that was run until lunchtime on the 4th of April, when the trolleybuses were taken off one by one and substituted for new Daimler Fleetline motorbuses. It's quite badly printed, but just to illustrate what we're talking about, there's one of the Daimler Fleetlines which is now preserved. That's the kind of bus that replaced the trolleybuses. So the 4th of April 1971 wasn't quite the end for the trolleybuses, because there'd been an enthusiast tour book for 2 weeks later. So on Sunday the 18th of April, T281, which had formerly been numbered 1 in the fleet, operated a tour in the morning for the Omnibus Society. And in the afternoon, T285, the format number 5, and ex-Reading T291 ran in convoy. 285 carried enthusiasts, 291 carried civic dignitaries and staff of Teesside Municipal Transport. And then on arrival back at the depot, Alderman F. Morris, the chairman of the Transport Committee, presented T285 to the Teesside County Council for preservation and then switched off the traction currents. The picture we're looking at is T291, the ex-Reading trolleybus used on the final tour, the one that carried the civic dignitaries, etc. As you can see, it was lettered up before the 4th of April for the final day. There was a bit of controversy about that, not in the way there would be nowadays. Obviously, there was no internet, so there were no internet forums to kick off, or Twitter and Facebook and things. But there was a subdued 1970s controversy, simply because it was an ex-Reading bus. A lot of enthusiasts thought that they should have done one of the native vehicles that had been new to Teesside. But either way, it was nice they bothered to do anything. As you can see, it had some quite involved lettering to say how many people had been carried and how many miles had been run. So in total, 3 of the trolleybuses were preserved, the rest were scraps. The wires were quickly removed following closure, and then not long afterwards, redevelopment of the area where the trolleybuses had run, so many of the houses and shops that they'd served demolished. Such that only 5 years later, the ex-trolleybus services only warranted a half-hourly frequency each way, whereas in trolleybus days they've been every 10 minutes with peak extras. So we're now going to look at the route on a map. Anybody who's watched my videos before will know I normally draw my own maps, but on this occasion I've managed to find a printed one in the timetable I referred to from 5 years after closure in 1976. Although it is afterwards, you can see the route of the trolleybuses, so we'll follow that. Don't worry, there will be a rubbishy homemade map in the video shortly as well, so you will get your fix of that. But yeah, we'll look at the map in a moment. So there you go folks, one map as promised. So the trolleybus is terminated, as we said, in North Ormesby, or Doggy as locals call it, and it terminated at Smeaton Street with its junction with West Terrace, which was just about here somewhere. I think the South Bank Road there became Smeaton Street, so it was just about here that they terminated. So they ran along South Bank Road, past the depot, over the North Eastern Railway, the Eston branch, to South Bank. This was Bennett's Corner in South Bank. As we said, the original route split. So the Grangetown service went along Middlesbrough Road, along Eston Road, and then Bolckow Road, and it would have gone up to the marketplace, which is about here somewhere. That was the original 1919 route to Grangetown. In the meantime, the Normanby route went down Normanby Road there to Normanby Terminus. It just turned around in this road junction there with Ormesby Road and High Street. The 1951 extension saw the trolleybuses go along Bolckow Road and then down Birchington Avenue. Kingsley Road was approximately here. The terminus was just short of it actually. There was a roundabout put in to the road to enable the trolleybuses to turn just short of Kingsley Road, so it was around here somewhere. And in 1964 the route was extended along to Fabian Road, another roundabout. You can see Fabian Road there, they would have turned round there. And then finally the 1968 extension took them along the rest of Birchington Avenue and then down the High Street in Eston to the Normanby terminus, and then to join up with the Normanby route there. In addition, in 1919 a reverser was put in, as I said, at South Bank, just along Normanby Road on the first side street off after Bennett's Corner, just here somewhere. And then in 1970, March 1970, as we mentioned, the route was cut back in North Ormesby by about 200 yards, so it would have been about here, and there was a reverser at Hampden Street. So just for anybody not familiar with trolleybuses, we're going to go through what I mean by reverser and things like that, and we'll go through the turning procedures as well. And I promised you a rubber sheet home drawn diagram, so prepare yourselves because here one comes. So there you go folks, one absolute stinker of a diagram, I'm sure you'll agree. We'll just take you through the turning procedures with this rather nice corgi trolleybus that we've got. So Normanby was quite straightforward, same kind of turning manoeuvre as many other places around the UK. I think this is Normanby Road. The trolleybuses would come out of it and they would just swing round using the full width of the road at the junction like that, and then go back down Normanby Road again. As traffic levels increased on the road across there, it became more of a problem. That's why they wanted to build the extension, so that trolleybuses could just use the junction the conventional way. If they were going anti-clockwise, just turned left, and if they were going clockwise, they turned right. But the point is they use the junction in the normal way with the flow of traffic, rather than turning around in the middle of it. At North Ormesby, the original terminus, the turning arrangements were quite bizarre really. They were very similar, but again, if you take it, this is Smeaton Street and this is West Terrace. What they would do, they would come out of Smeaton Street and they would turn, but they only turned halfway across West Terrace like that, so they ended up facing the oncoming traffic. And then they would turn back into Smeaton Street like that. In the 1950s, health and safety kind of took over because it was becoming increasingly dangerous. So they put traffic lights on West Terrace, which were operated by a thing called a frog, in other words, a switch that was in the overhead wires. So when the booms of the trolleybus hit the frog in the overhead wire, they turned the traffic lights on West Terrace to red, and that enabled the trolleybus to do its manoeuvre without encountering oncoming traffic. We mentioned the reversers as well. There was one at South Bank from 1919 when the system opened, and one was put in at Hampden Street in North Ormesby to replace the turning manoeuvre we've just seen. Basically, all the reverser was exactly what it sounded. If this is Smeaton Street and this is Hampden Street, the trolleybus would pull past it and then it would just reverse in and then drive back out again to go the other way. And that was all the reverser was. I know it looks a bit amateurish, but you know, for people who are not familiar with these terms, it's easier to show you with a rubbish diagram and a model trolleybus than it is to sit and talk about it. One thing Teesside Trolleybuses did have, which I think was unique to them, was this thing you can see on the back of the model. I've got a photograph of it there. Basically, when it was making one of these turning manoeuvres at North Ormesby and at Normanby, this would be lit up and the words "turning circle" would appear in it. And that was to warn following drivers that the bus was going to go right round. It wasn't just making a right turn at the junction. It was actually going to swing right round and come back again. How effective it was, I don't know, because as I said, I think it was unique to the Teesside system. So basically, if the driver behind you was local, they would understand what it meant and what the bus was going to do. And if they weren't local, they wouldn't have a clue, basically. It just relied on the common sense of them to go, I don't know what that means, I'll hang back. But yeah, that's what that was for. They may well have used it as well when they were turning around at Grangetown and on the various turns along Birchington Avenue as the system was extended. But I don't know, they certainly did use it though at Normanby and at North Ormesby. So we'll look now at some photographs of the system. These are all licensed under Creative Commons License 2.0. A lot of them are by Alan Murray Rust, some of them by David Hillis, a few of them are by other photographers. I'll put in the description of the video the credits for the photographs. But as I say, they are licensed under Creative Commons. So this one is North Ormesby, Smeaton Street, looking towards the former turning circle. I think this is just after the Hampden Street reverser had been brought in. It's off to the left. The bus on the left hand side is waiting to back into Hampden Street, I believe. But you can see what Smeaton Street was like. It was a street of shops, streets of houses going off it. The kind of little community that would be quite handy today, actually, with the environmental targets. You didn't have to drive anywhere. You could just walk down to the local main road, and there were shops there selling everything you could think of, from an onion to a settee and from a loaf of bread to a television. You can see a United bus in the background making its way along as well. The trolleybus in the foreground is T294, registration CPY287, formerly number 4 in the fleet. This is one of the wartime Sunbeam Ws delivered in October 1944. It's got its replacement 1960s row body. So another shot of North Ormesby. The previous shot was taken after August 1970, when the fleet was renumbered. This is a shot looking along from the Hampden Street reverse. The bus is just about to reverse back into Hampden Street. The bus in this one is number 4, registration number GAJ14, and that's one of the 1950 Sunbeam F4s. Looking along Smeaton Street, you can see it looks like some of the property's already been demolished. There are some quite large gaps on the skyline. You can also see the disused trolleybus pole just beyond the lamppost there as well, where the route's been cut back. This number 4 seems to have been the Kim Kardashian of the Teesside Trolleybus fleet, and it was always being photographed, as you will see as we go through these photos. Just by way of contrast, we've got a picture of the area today. Smeaton Street was somewhere underneath the roundabout of the A66 there. This is West Terrace coming down here, or what's left of it. So yeah, the junction with Smeaton Street was along there somewhere. The entire area was demolished shortly after the trolleybuses finished running. And to be honest, very little was built apart from the A66. You can see on the right hand side there are some very modern buildings that have been built in more recent years. So the whole area and the first part of Smeaton Street and South Bank Road is now gone completely. South Bank Road is truncated. There's a footpath running alongside the A66, roughly on the alignment of it. And then the truncated remains of the road come in a little bit further down. So we move along the road slightly to the Cargo Fleet Works. This was the steelworks of the Cargo Fleet Iron Company. This shot was taken in 1966. It shows one of the row rebodied trolleybuses picking up steel workers with a United Bristol low decker going in the opposite direction. It's quite a nice period photograph. And a slightly later photograph taken roughly in the same place, circa 1971. That's one of the ex-Reading trolleybuses, T289, registration VRD184. As you can see, the blind on it showing Eston via NBY. NBY is Normanby. The other one was Eston via GTN, which was Grangetown. It's very much a local system. It's very unlikely anybody from out of town would have travelled on it. It wasn't quite local enough to refer to North Ormesby as dogged. It did put North Ormesby on the blinds. But certainly, if you weren't local, you wouldn't know what NBY or GTN meant. But as I say, any out of town people will be on the buses from Middlesbrough, probably, run by United and the TRTB. And they wouldn't have used the trolleybuses. So just next to the Cargo Fleet Works was the depot. You can see the Cargo Fleet offices there. And if we look at this shot of the area today, you can see the offices just in the background of the shot. The depot was here where this container's stacked. There's nothing left of it today, as you can see, but you can see that the curb still comes in where the entrance would have been. So the depot building was there, and then there was a yard next to it to the right. In the foreground here is Middlesbrough Old Road. That's the old alignment that went over the level crossing of the Eston branch railway of the North Eastern Railway. So going off to the right again is the diversion that the trolleybus company had to build to get over the railway on the bridge. There's a slightly closer photo of the curb. Again, you can see the Cargo Fleet offices in the background there, and you can see the curb coming in where the entrance would have been. And then we've got a shot looking in the opposite direction. So again, this would have been the depot here and the yard next to it. And you can see the road climbing up onto the bridge. The bridge is still there. The Eston branch line closed in 1966 and was lifted, but the bridge over the alignment of it is still in place to this day, as you can see. Now in 1966, some trolleybus poles were put down the old road across the level crossing, temporarily because the bridge needed repairs. It was 51 years old at the time and it needed some repairs, so road traffic was diverted via the old road over the level crossing. It didn't really matter at the time. As I said, the branch was closed in 1966, so it was in its final days. There was very little traffic. The North Eastern Railway weren't around anymore to complain anyway. They'd become part of the London and North Eastern Railway in 1923, and then the railways had been nationalised and become British Railways in 1948. But some of the poles that were put in temporarily down Middlesbrough Old Road are still in place today, as you can see here. And just one in the foreground there as well if I zoom out. And a slightly closer view just with the junction of Middlesbrough Old Road and Salisbury Terrace, with one of the few surviving old buildings in the area just coming into the picture on the right there. The area has been completely redeveloped since trolleybus days. All the houses and things have gone, and the steelworks as well. The cargo fleet iron and steelworks, steelworking finished in 1973 and was moved to Lackenby, so 2,000 jobs were lost at cargo fleet at that time, but parts of the site remained in use for a little bit longer until the 1980s when the rest of it closed and was demolished. And as I say, all the streets of houses around and about have been demolished as well. I believe some replacement houses were built at one point in the 1970s and they've been demolished as well, so there's just a large sort of grassed area around most of it, and as you can see there, the odd car dealership, retail premises, light industrial unit, etc. But there's not much been built in the area. But yeah, the trolleybus poles on the temporary 1966 diversion still remain at the time of doing this video in October 2023, and hopefully long will they remain as well. It's nice to see some reminders of the system. So back to the older photographs. This is vehicle number 4 again, making another appearance. It's just come across Bennett's Corner in South Bank. The Normanby road is off to the right there, the Normanby route. So it's just come across there. By the look of it, it's come straight across from the Grangetown direction. This photo was taken on the 18th of July 1970 when the vehicle was in use on an enthusiast tour, which was photographed quite a few times, hence the number of appearances. But yeah, the reverser at South Bank that was put in 1919 was just round there. The first side street on the left had the reverser in it as well. So going in the same direction at the same place, just taking slightly further back towards Grangetown, just before the road junction. This is T291 on the final day of normal operation, Sunday the 4th of April 1971, carrying its commemorative lettering. So again, Normanby Road just off to the right in front of the bus in this shot. So we've got a shot of T285 registration GAJ15, the former number 5 in the TRTB fleet. It's another one from Sunday the 4th of April 1971, the last day of normal operation. And it's just passing the South Bank Iron and Steel Works. That complex was mainly closed in the 1980s and demolished, but parts of it survived, including the coke ovens, until 2015. But it's all gone nowadays. So yeah, the South Bank Works was quite popular as a backdrop for photographers. They've got trolleybus number 13, registration CPY 311, passing by it in March 1966, on its way to Grangetown Fabian Road. And we've managed to go a couple of photographs without seeing vehicle number 4, so there it is again on its enthusiast tour in 1970, again passing part of the South Bank Works. Another picture of T291 on the final day of normal operation, the 4th of April 1971, again passing part of the works complex. To show you again how the area has changed, this is Middlesbrough Road in South Bank. The trolleybuses would have come along where the pavement is now. That was the original alignment of the road. It's been kinked around to provide a roundabout where you can access the A66. But you can see the entire area has been redeveloped. There's a couple of old buildings in the background there. But yeah, not much left at all. So now we come to the reason that single deckers were only allowed on the system until 1944. The railway bridge at the junction of Eston Road and Bolckow Road. This trolleybus has just turned into Bolckow Road. You can see the extremely limited clearance. The booms of the trolleybus would actually be at right angles at this point over the pavement to try and get some clearance. The bridge carried the private railway of Bolckow Vaughan Ironworks. It's called the Normanby branch, but it went to Eston, and it served mines in the Eston area, and then it was cut back, I think, and it served various parts of the industrial complex until the works closed down. I think the railway line was demolished in about the 1980s, I'm not 100% sure. The trolleybus in this one is unidentified, unfortunately. You can just about make out the T of the fleet number on the back there, but you can't read the fleet number itself, and the registration plate is behind the bollard there. Just got a shot there of car 4 coming underneath the railway bridge. Again, another shot of vehicle number 4, and again showing the extremely limited clearance. And just by contrast, that's the site of the bridge today. As you can see, all trace, more or less all trace of it is gone. There's still a little bit of wall there, and there's a bit on the other side as well. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't realise there'd ever been a railway line there, let alone a low bridge. Now, one of the features of trolleybus systems in the later years was the use of preserved vehicles to provide tows on other systems. This is Brighton Hoven District 6340, registration number CPM 61. It's a 1939 Wayman-bodied AEC. On closure of the Brighton system, it was preserved, and it was brought up by its owners to Teesside on the 31st of March 1968 to provide an enthusiast tour to commemorate the opening of the new extension between Fabian Road and Normanby via Eston. In this shot, it's turning around in Grangetown Marketplace. So it's a rare shot of a trolleybus in the marketplace. By the time photography became widespread, very few trolleybuses actually used that extension. You can see the chimneys of the steelworks behind. By way of contrast, this is what's left of the area today. The road, West Lane, that the trolleybuses would have used to come up and turn into the marketplace is just here. The marketplace would have been somewhere in this area. The A66 goes across the back, and again the entire area has been demolished and just basically left. There's, you know, the odd light industrial unit, but a lot of it is this kind of scrubby waste ground. So that's all that's left of the area today. This photo was taken in April 1967. It shows car number 2, registration GAJ12, turning round at Fabian Road. That's when the terminus was still there. You can see the new housing being built behind it. Just going around the roundabout at Fabian Road there to go back down Birchington Avenue towards North Ormesby. And then 31st of March 1968, you've got car 3 there, registration GAJ13, just about to break the tape at Fabian Road to go onto the new extension towards Eston. You can see Brighton Hoven District 6340, just the other side of the roundabout there, waiting to follow it. There's also a tower wagon just here on the right hand side, you can see. They were exactly what they sounded. It was a lorry with a tower built onto the back of it, as you can see. Some of the more modern ones are the telescopic tower, other ones it was just a large wooden structure with a ladder up it. And basically the overhead line engineers would climb up it to do any repairs that stand on there so they could reach the overhead lines. The reason it was there, it was the first day of the new extension, so it would have been put there just in case there were any teething troubles that became apparent. They could repair them as and when they arose, and save the embarrassment of a trolleybus being broken down for ages while it waited for recovery or repair. This was another favourite location for photographers, further up Birchington Avenue, which as you can see goes up quite a hill. Off to the left you've got Grosmont Road, and off to the right you've got Ainthorpe Road. So the South Bank Ironworks provides the backdrop. Again, it was a favourite point to photograph the trolleybuses. You've got the industrial backdrop in the background there. Just to the right of here nowadays is a retail park with, I think, Iceland and places like that on it. But I believe that complex hadn't been built at this point. You can't identify which one the trolleybus is. The photograph was taken around 1971. It just shows the nature of the extension, the kind of landscape and housing it ran through. So another photo from today. If you've driven into Eston, past the top of Birchington Avenue, you'll notice this, the world's shortest section of dual carriageway. This was actually built for the trolleybus extension because there was concern about the trolleybuses making the right turn out of Birchington Avenue, which is here, into the High Street. The bit of road off to the left is sort of quite a main road. It was national speed limit. and so there was a lot of concern about the trolleybuses turning out and being sort of hit by any cars coming down. There's a bit of a bend just off to the left as well. So to mitigate that, they put this little bit of a reservation in to make a very short section of dual carriageway. Literally what you see is what you've got. But the idea of that was that the trolleybus could come out over here and it could stand in the island here out of the way. It could be fully accommodated in there while the driver checked to make sure the road was clear and it turned out. Trolleybuses, although they could accelerate quite quickly, they weren't very quick at going around corners. They had to take it quite steady so that the booms didn't come off the overhead wire. So yeah, again, if you've ever wondered why there's a little tiny bit of dual carriageway is there as you drop down into Eston, that's why it was put in for the trolleybuses. This is vehicle T287, registration GAJ17, the former number 7, at Eston Square Shopping Centre on the 1968 extension. Photograph was taken in 1971. It's a rather nice photo. You can see the Teesside Municipal Transport livery very clearly there, of turquoise and cream. There was a rumour that they'd mixed together the green of TRTB and Stockton and the blue of Middlesbrough to form the turquoise colour. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's probably an old wives' tale. And then this is ex-Reading T289 VRD 184, also in Eston. Again showing the destination Eston via GTN, or Grangetown in other words. And then the final shot we've got of this tour around the system, this is on Normanby Road, near the junction of Park Avenue. You can't quite identify the vehicle. It's taken in 1966, so the bus is still in the Teesside Railless Traction Board livery, as they were still in charge. It's showing Normanby on the blind. Obviously being 1966, the extension hadn't opened yet, so the terminus was still at Normanby. It's just heading down there towards the terminus. So as I mentioned earlier on, 3 of the trolleybuses are preserved. Vehicle number 2, registration GAJ12, is currently at the Keighley Bus Museum. That's in TRTB livery now. It was preserved for quite a while in Teesside Municipal Transport colours, I believe, but it's now back in the TRTB green and cream. Vehicle 5, registration GAJ15, that was the one presented to the Teesside County Council. It's now in Kirkleatham Museum, and again I think it's back in TRTB green now after a long time in TMT turquoise. And then finally you've got this vehicle T291, the former Reading 186, registration VRD 186. This was the one decorated for the final runs of the trolleybus system. Currently it's at Beamish. The photograph here shows it at the Black Country Living Museum at Dudley, but it's currently at Beamish. And it's still in Teesside Municipal Transport livery, but it's had the lettering taken off it. It was preserved for a long time with this commemorative lettering on it, but it's now been repainted back into the standard livery without that. It's just in turquoise and cream. So yeah, apart from the odd bits of roundabouts and central reservations and things I've showed you, there's very little of the trolleybus system, apart from a few trolley poles along Middlesbrough Old Road in South Bank. The depot at Cargo Fleet, which was always referred to as Cargo Fleet Depot in TRTP days, Teesside Municipal Transport had 3 depots. The ex-Stockton one was known as North, the ex-Middlesbrough one was known as Central, and the ex-TRTB one was known as South. So as well as housing the trolleybuses, it housed TRTB's motor buses, and when the trolleybuses finished, it carried on in operation as a bus garage. The replacement vehicles for the trolleybus route were based there. In 1974, 1st of April 1974, there was another local government reorganisation. The Teesside County Borough, for whom Teesside Municipal Transport were the transport operator, were changed. It became the County of Cleveland instead as part of the reorganisation. And the transport operator became the Langbath, Middlesbrough and Stockton-on-Tees Joint Committee, which luckily developed the catchier trading name of Cleveland Transit. So they kept the old depot. They called it South Bank Garage in Cleveland Transit days, and it remained in operation until 1986 and bus deregulation when it was closed, and then as we saw earlier on, it's been demolished. So yeah, there are only a few remnants, the odd bit of road infrastructure, and there's a few poles in the South Bank area and the preserved trolleybuses. So that's it for this look at the Teesside Trolleybus system. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you as always for joining me. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.